Kevin Short, SPS,
S
Glenrock, Wyoming.
SPS? No, SPS as in Sam. Pipeline Sam, right?
Short Powerline Service.
Short Powerline Service. There we go. That's even a better way to say it. Let's say the actual words instead of trying to say the Army phonetics and realizing I'm not sure what they are. All I know is E is for echo.
This acronym. We own this acronym.
Oh, you do? Okay. I'm looking at your business card here, which I obtained at the Energy Expo in Gillette, Wyoming. And
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at Drone Kings and Short Powerline Service. You guys have, in construction here, you guys have a couple of things under your umbrella, huh?
We do. So we started out in 1985 as Short Powerline Services. That was started by Bill Short. And as he aged, he sold it to his son, Jeff, who stayed traditionally Powerline. Well, Jeff started up another branch called TDS, and that stood for Transmission Distribution Services, actually. And they did business for a while under that. There's a lot of competition under the transmission business, so that kind of faded away. Jeff sold it to Robert Short, his younger brother, and Robert decided to, him and Alan Jennings decided to bring this company along and look at other venues for revenue. So they started up Short Powerline Electric. So now you have feet on the streets, traditional journeyman electricians and master electricians performing service and new installation in the commercial and oil industry. So they felt like there's still a open market to be a general contractor. So they revitalized TDS as their general contractor name. So we do building construction, cement work, excavation, and just general contracting. And with this came a need we discovered for surveying for the oil companies using drone technology, and thus is what Drone Kings was based on, was doing surveying for the oil companies for well sites and power line observations and other things like that. So that's kind of what started each one, and you saw us up in Gillette where we're ready to take it to the next level.
And what is that next level? Is it the Drone Kings, or is it some sort of integration of all four together as one big superpower transformer, or what's the next level?
Yeah, and that's a good question. So and with Drone King, what it is there's a lot of data to be collected. You know, the whole thing with the way the industry is there's a produce and consume, and that's really the driving heartbeat of the industry. Well, as that becomes stagnant, it's just cyclical, up and down, up and down, up and down. There's not a lot of variation. They realized, there's a lot of data out there to be had, and this data is going to be able to allow you to afford intelligence decisions between that cyclical up and down industry. So there's just a plethora of data out there to be collected, and there's a lot of people coming up with data mining, different ways to get data. So what we did was the visualization data, the actual real-time data with the drone. So we're seeing that we could do reclamation, pre-construction, during construction. So you have basically, the position of your material, whatever phase it's in. If you're building a pipeline, what the ground looked like first, what the ground looks like under construction, where the pipe lays within the ground, what the backfill looks like, and then once again, 3 to 4 years, what does that reclamation look like? And that's all data. And we know this data can be equated to dollars in the industry, right?
I was going to say the next big gold rush is probably going to be this big data, the layering of the data together into new information. And when you bring in the information from 2 miles below the surface like they've been able to do, especially in North Dakota where they have the Laird Library, which is pretty much any rock that has been cracked open since the 1950s or 60s. I forget when the actual date is. There's a record of it. Every core sample from the 50s up in the University of North Dakota's rock library, because that was a policy put into place. So when you start layering in, information from 2 miles below the Earth's surface from 1950 to 2 miles above the Earth's surface to modern day, you're going to have a whole new outlook on everything. Do you understand what I mean by that?
I absolutely do, and that's kind of where we're looking at, is that it's where's your place? Well, there's a lot of guys, Baker Hughes, with some of the things that they have done and able to extrapolate that data that you're talking about. I've had the actual pleasure of working with Dr. Lynn Hills, who is the inventor of the AI used in that kind of data collection in the oil and gas industry. And he did that for Baker Hughes and a few of those other companies before he moved into mining. But there's players in that. But like you're saying, here's a surface play where it's been just traditionally word of mouth. The validation has been
right. You've had
not much visualization.
You've had crop sprayers at cafes who have been the most reliable pieces of information up till now. I mean,
absolutely, absolutely, and the good old boy syndrome, right?
Oh, totally, without a doubt. So let's talk about that a little bit, because what we're talking about here is some valuable information. There is a percentage of the population that knows big data and the layering of this big data into a monetizing field is just around the corner. It could be tomorrow or it could be in 5 years, but they know that when it happens, it's going to happen fast. And there's a reason there's a big control over it, and North Dakota, where I'm familiar with, is one of 6 or 7 states that is a test state for FAA regulations and a lot of these other things. I've seen firsthand and I've heard firsthand, at least being in one of the test states, it's a tough market entry. There's a lot of barriers to entry in the marketplace. You're in Wyoming. I don't know your guys' regulations there, but talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges and successes you're having getting into the marketplace.
So with the drone king?
Yeah, with the drones here. Sorry, yes.
Okay. So one of the challenges is that it's the perception is that this is a hobby, right? It's something that I bought my kid one from Golden Image or from Radio Shack, and he flies it around, takes pictures of the yard, the cats, chases the neighbor's dog, whatever. So this is a hobbyist. And so one of our challenges has been to take it into a professional realm, beyond hobby. Beyond this is something you could do yourself. So we really stress hard and heavy that all of our pilots are licensed. So we go and take the tests, the federal drone aviation testing, and we're certified. So when we do this, we have to plot out the air, because now we're up there as professionals. It is against the law for hobbyists to be flying their airplanes around, or their drones around where we're flying. That was an extreme challenge, because it was just to get somebody to understand the validity of the industrial use of drones and drone type aerial coverage. And so, everybody's thinking we're just taking pictures. This is beyond pictures. We have gas, and I'm going to mess this up so bad, chromatographic rendering. So I could take a picture of a leak on a pipe, and through the color spectrum, tell you what's leaking and how much is leaking out of a pipe, using other like FLIR technologies attached to the drones. So our challenge is marrying our industry knowledge with the available product out there, and how do we apply it to industry. And we're at the leading edge of that, to be brutally honest. Trying to do a tank scan, discovered that there's no drone out there that is intrinsically safe. There's no such thing as an intrinsically safe drone, nor is there a requiem for it. So how would I be able to fly that into a Class 1 Div 1 vessel, right? It's a hell of a challenge.
You know, one of the things that I've seen is the acceptance of new technology, whether it's an email or having to have a website or whatever it might be. Drones is a new technology, and that's kind of what you're talking about. Is some people just don't they don't see it as, oh, what do you mean you can use a computer in the office? People play solitaire on that. Nobody actually uses it in the workplace. I mean, it's very similar mentality. It really is to where I do. I question, and I just challenge people to take a step back and say, if you really don't see the actual intrinsic and valuable properties and values that a drone can bring to whatever life you're living beyond a hobby, well, you're not stepping back far enough. And so that's how I mean, right away you can see how it could benefit. I mean, just even transmission lines. I mean, you don't have to have guys climbing poles anymore. I mean, they can go just fly a drone. And so I remember sitting in a council meeting in North Dakota in Bismarck, and this was not even 5 years ago, and they were still using crop dusters to check pipelines. And I thought, my goodness, we live in a world where this is fun. I've been tracking drones since 2007. 2009, I interviewed somebody who just got back from Israel, and they had drones the size of honeybees back in 2009. So, I mean, when you say, we're a little behind, you're being kind.
Yes.
And so when I look at the next year, the same group of men that got together and said we're going to use crop dusters when they had drones at their disposal, the next year used drones and acted like they never even heard of crop dusters. Being real leaders like they are. Hey, when you make a decision, you never look back, type thing. Talk to me a little bit. Yeah, talk to me about that a little bit, because it's like when the acceptance happens, boom, it happens quick.
Right, and so I should just say that for what we're wanting to do, we've discovered that really the niche is not to just go and promote drones. It's a service a drone provides. So really, drones is a vessel, it's a tool. So as an electrician, that would be like me going out and saying I'm a Klein electrician or a Phillips or a standard screwdriver kind of guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're now saying let's not rest on this drone technology, because what you're going to find is that once you throw a price in there, with what you're really offering is a service, not the drone. And once you provide the service, immediately everybody's going to cavitate to, well, hell, I can buy a drone and do that myself for a lot less money. Not realizing, do a cursory audit on that and tell me what your overall costs are of your people involved in this, right?
Hey man, you're talking to a professional writer and interviewing. You're speaking my language now, because anybody can speak and anybody can write and anybody can speak. Oh yeah, totally. I know exactly what you're talking about. Anyway, go on.
No, and that's it. So it's like, do this cursory audit and let's find out where the gray money is here, right? And that's what we're absorbing. So rather than get into that silly new technology argument, which really kind of stalls a lot of new technology, is our great I can do what you can do mentality, if you keep it simple. So we need to so what we're doing here at Drone King is we're selling a service. So rather than scan a tank for like one of those floating ceilings for integrity breaches, we don't only do the drone, but we'll put a LiDAR, which is a Tremel that I think you saw at the show. We had one there, the yellow LiDAR Tremel.
I am familiar with LiDAR, yes. It kind of reminds me of the way video games were in the 80s, but modernized, where you've got basically like a Google Earth type thing. Not the terrain, but where you've got,
right,
like the shapes, the geometry look of the Earth, a LiDAR type of a thing. It's not and Yeah, that technology's been around for a little while, and that has been some great. I've seen outstanding upgrades in that. But anyway, go on.
Well, and so that's what we're looking at is the upgrades, the billion points, per square meter type thing. And so between the two of them, you can tweak that information, put it in the central database, and now you have a 2D, 3D, 1D rendering of whatever the target was you had. So what we're looking at is not saying we're flying drones, but instead we're saying you have purchased some old oil wells or some old gas plants. And one of the things that you have lost is the red lines. So I'm going to give you a perfect example with a customer conversation. You've lost the red lines. So what's really in those panels right after 3 or 4 ownership? And they don't know. So what we could do just on a controls aspect is stick a LiDAR. I could scan the inside of one of those panels. I could come back with all the electromechanical componentry and then integrating that with our electrical engineering capability, we'll be able to give you a fairly 95 to 98% accurate set of red lines that then all we have to do is just get into your program to fill in the minutia. Now you have a documented, data-heavy piece of propaganda or peripheral that you could go in and service your equipment from this point on, right? And that's some of the things we're looking for the drone and LiDAR marrying those technologies. So we're not necessarily leading with one. We're just asking you what you want done, and then we'll pick the best tool to give you this visual data that you have asked us for. So it might not be a drone. It might not be LiDAR.
Sure. What type of response are you getting with the drones? You said it's hard for people to get by the hobby part of it, but once they do it and once they understand just the sheer additional opportunities, and that's the thing that I want people to understand here is that I believe this wholeheartedly. The data that's collected there, that can be used and reused multiple times for things. And there can be revenue centers created out of the thin blue sky once you have that stuff created. That's how I look at this stuff, honestly. Because go ahead.
No, it is, and that's the one thing that I'm talking to the oil and gas about is that we're looking at well pads, we're looking at construction, we're looking at power line, we're looking at pipelines and stuff like that. But there's these other entities that need to be satisfied, and one of them is the EPA. And what better way to validate, justify, or control what your interaction with the EPA is than a visualization? Because really, that's all they have to go by. These deer, you're drilling, you run these deer off. Prove it to me. Show it to me. Right? Well, we could take a camera and show there's deer there, with infrared camera imagery on the wildlife as well. But you run into a problem because then the government's like, we don't want you flying around and harassing wildlife. So one of the challenges is to get the government entities and the ONG entities to come to an agreement that if that is their technology of proving that the ONG did bad to the area, the ONG has to have the same amount of rights to validate or justify that did not take place, right? Mm-hmm. Because the government can fly a drone all day.
Right.
To be honest. There's nothing we can do about it. Unless you decide to take a microwave oven and throw it upside down on your house, I guess you could take one down that way. But.
I think there was one county in Colorado that passed a law that you can shoot drones out of the sky if there was. Yeah, they actually did. They actually passed it because there were so many drones flying around. It's like a drone hunting season, I guess. I'm not sure, but how big are the drones that you're talking about? Are they, they're not the size of a small airplane, are they? But they're bigger than a football.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a fixed wing drone that has a 50-pound payload. We actually have it right now. And so it's the size of bit of a pickup, I'd say, for sure.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's got some size to it.
Right. You just, you can get these big ones, but the line of sight is always going to be an issue when you're in oil and gas and anywhere we have power lines and cranes and drilling rigs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just don't want to send your drone out flying without, because basically your drone's looking at a fixed target. It's not really looking at what it's about ready to run into. Yeah. That's why you have spotters on the ground.
The other part that I like about drones, and I apologize to listeners out here. I'm not doing a commercial here for Short Powerline Services. I'm trying to do a commercial for the aviation drone industry, because I've been covering it pretty good since 2007, 2008. And the part that I really enjoy about this is that it exposes so much new information that it intuitively becomes a proactive solution to so much. There, you can actually see things. I know in Ohio they're finding abandoned wells, so they're being proactive on that. And I can see the day when all of a sudden agriculture is going to be folded into this, and who knows, in Wyoming in next 5 years, you guys might figure out some new crop that can grow in the soil there, because the drones will figure out there's X amount of acres of this type of soil that does this crop and this and that and everything. Do you know what I mean by the proactive nature and the just the sheer intuitiveness that this stuff creates?
Absolutely. Well, so one area just on that is that we fly around like a prairie dog town, doing counts of active versus inactive prairie dog holes.
You're actually talking about real life prairie dogs here.
Right. The density of it.
God bless America. God bless America, where that's a job where you can fly around and check prairie dogs. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Right on, right? So we fly around and we look, and if there's a spider web in front of the hole, that's not an occupied hole. And we can see that from a distance versus, people have to have boots on the street to see that.
That's a great point. And I have absolutely no idea how that's relevant to what you're talking about, but I do see where that can be relevant in other areas. I just out of curiosity, how is that relevant? Because that's...
So it's relevant. We all hate vermin, right?
Okay, so it has to do with the pest control and pest location and activity.
But it's also far beyond our scope. The Game and Fish looks at that as, what is the cycle? Are we in a predator cycle or are we in a prey cycle, right?
Right. Game and Fish looks at that as gold.
Right. That's an ecosystem must. It's
right.
Something we've never had. So we just kind of randomly, arbitrarily, how many elk and deer licenses and antelope licenses we give out in an area. Now we can actually base it on what that ecosystem is supporting at the time.
Right. This is not, this is what I've been trying to educate people on for years, is the counting of herds of cattle. They do that with drones, where they'll fly cattle over to count, no different with elk and herds of deer, etc. And the other part was, I used to give the example of a row of sunflowers or potatoes, to where you'd have the drone fly over, and then they'd be able to actually identify if an individual plant on an individual leaf had a potato blight disease. And then it would do in real time is send a piece of information over to another drone. Maybe it's a 4-wheel drive drone, or maybe it's just another flying drone, but it goes over to that specific leaf, and it just kind of does one of those perfume mists of pesticides or whatever spray they have to take care of that potato blight, which is going to decrease the amount of pesticides and fungicides and everything by about 99%. And the other part is that it's going to create, this need for just finding out different diseases like that. Do you know that's how precise agriculture is becoming? And your story of the spider web, it's the same thing. That's the same to me. That's the same amount of precision that we're bringing into other fields. That spider web is relevant for the game and fish people, just like the potato blight is relevant to farmers.
Right, and so then the same now We're going to change industry with the same thought process, okay? So now I have a refinery, and I have all this process instrumentation out there that is all addressable. Are you familiar if I get into automation control by addressable?
I am.
Okay, so I know where everything is based on by its address, right? Whether Ethernet to it or I'm going through a PLC, everything has an address, so I know everything's position, where it's located at this facility. So now if I have a gas leak, you have a drone and a mailbox with a interrogation, gas detection, thermography, color spectrum, and you could actually put LEL meters on these things if you want so they could sniff. So now you have a gas leak. You see a pressure variance within a process, so you can pretty much know where that is in the process. But you have like insulation on there, heat tape, and so it can traverse up and down through that. So now you deploy this drone out of its mailbox. It sees an emergency. The PLC goes into a subroutine saying, I am detecting a heavy variation in my loop here. So the pressure's dropped immensely, or pressure's gained immensely, or one of the other meters is picking up an LEL gas. So this comes out, deploys out of its mailbox slot, this drone does, and goes and does an interrogation of the area so it really pinpoints where that is. So you have now rapid deployment to fix this area, which is kind of unheard of in the refineries, rapid deployment. The word rapid is almost unheard of in refinery anymore. But it's rapidly deploy these things. And so having that conversation, it led to, here's a crazy thing. Out of all this led to a conversation of how do we, if somebody goes overboard on a Carnival ship, how would drones be utilized in that kind of instance? And it's amazing. There's no end to this drone technology. Remembering that a drone is a programmable piece of apparatus, just like a PLC is. And so you can have this thing do many, many functions that it's not even capable of doing yet today, other than in the military, because they've utilized it as a weapon. And now, rather than a weapon, we utilize it as a tool. We deploy it to go and do things, do drilling rig inspection, do gas plant, refinery inspection. Even in the mining industry, you can do shaft inspection where you just couldn't deploy a human before, rapidly. So now they know what's going on. They get their material, and there's definitely a study on the difference between blindly troubleshooting and having a visualization and troubleshooting, right? On how fast you could repair or deploy into the area that needs repair.
So
we're kind of focused on that too.
One of the things I wrote down from what you said earlier was, start thinking of drones as a service and not a drone. And that's kind of verbatim what you said, is paraphrased. But the one thing that I used to bring up all the time about North Dakota was that they manufacture the bodies down in Wahpeton, and then they construct them, and they have the aviation base up in Grand Forks, so you got the body of the drone. But in Fargo, they're building the brains. That's where they build all the software and the optics and all that other stuff. And so I used to point out that these are two extremely different parts of the business. One is one's the hardware, the drone itself, but the other one, the more valuable of the two in terms of the monetization part, is the software side. And when you do software, you got to know what you're doing. And you mentioned earlier, a lot of times the energy companies aren't necessarily sure what to do with drones. Are you finding that's kind of an issue, that you have to come to them and convince them why this service is needed? Because I see that being kind of one of your biggest challenges.
It is that, and believe it or not, is the creativity.
Well, it's like they don't know what to do with it. They know they need to, but what do we do with it? How do we utilize it? Because at the end of the day, they still got to go to their shareholders and justify it.
Well, and once you do that, once you convince them into an area, but I'll take this tank that we're going to scan. It got so into and we can that you just can't close. So it's a very volatile in a way, because there's, here's something they've never been introduced to. Now you're introducing them to them, and there's a whole world that's been playing in this for a long time. And so now the guys are all sudden, rather than, oh, well, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. So it's hard to finite them down to, let's do a project, okay? Let me just scan this for you.
Did that sum up? Did that sum up why everybody nodded their head in the last 3 minutes? Because you just said, and we can do this, and we can do that, to the point where it just doesn't close. Because that's the problem. I mean, I was thinking about, that's one of my biggest issues that I hear from my people is we don't do media anymore. We do an ecosystem of activity, meaning honestly, we're on, people ask us, well, are you on iTunes? Yeah, and iHeartMedia and about 70 other podcast platforms, because once you put it into one place, it goes to like 50 to 70 different places. I find our interviews on places I've never heard of, but we don't care, because that's part of our business plan, is to get the message out, and so when it comes to like your business, I can see where they just they talk themselves out of it, because it's too much. They can't wrap their mind on it when you're like, no, we need to focus. You can do all this stuff, but if you focus on one, you're going to find out how it's going to become exponential after you focus on one, because everything's exponential in a brain session meeting. So
it's the Swiss Army knife. I mean, you really just want a blade. So just open the blade. Only worry about the blade, right? We'll get to the fork and spoon later.
Right. Once we actually have a meal to eat, we'll get to the fork and spoon. But right now, we need the blade. Yeah. We need to get our food.
We just saw it. We had a customer with a shovel in the mining industry, a rather large shovel. These are we're talking like 90-yard buckets. And so it's easier for us to scan that, send it over to a 3D printer, and now you're holding this in your hand. It's a lot easier to look at it, and where would your mods be, right, to scale it, to play with it. And so we talked to a customer, drone technology. Well, we can fly that, because basically you can't get up and scan where it is. And so we fly it, we scan it, and then here they are again. Oh, we could, and then they come back to us, go, you know what? We're just going to buy our own drone and do it in-house. And that's one of the biggest fears about this technology, because let's be honest, that's what, unfortunately, on an up cycle of oil and gas, we tend to spend more on product than we do services. Yeah. And then once we go downstroke, we tend to spend more money on services to make that product validate itself, right?
So let's take a moment here. You got operators listening, you got potential clients listening, and we've got the same challenge from our standpoint of, we tell people all the time, sure, go out and do a podcast, sure, go out and do a blog, but one thing that we offer is we have radio stations and we have magazines and newspapers that pick up our stuff that separate us from the blogs and the podcasts. And just because somebody can print off a checklist doesn't mean that they're going to do it. And then I go back to, haven't you ever noticed that blogs and podcasts kind of seem to go away after 6 to 10 of them, because they realize it's a lot of work, and unless you have a mission and a focus and a business plan, it just dwindles away. And a lot of times these companies, it buys them 6 to 8 months or whatever the case is, and that hurts companies like myself, and I would imagine in your industry, companies like yourself. So in the way that I kind of just, lightly gave them a little bit of ribbing, you can go whatever direction you want, but what do you want these companies to know why they should hire you? Because you're right. They can buy a drone themselves and do what I just said, print off a checklist off the internet. But at the end of the day, you get what you pay for. You do. And talk to me a little bit about your experiences with what I just shared and what, your challenges are.
Okay, and then that's good, because what we did is we recognized that. So how are we going to differentiate ourselves? So it's your approach to business, your methodological approach to business. But we have to do this as any business that we're doing. If we're building Powerline, we have professionals. What are the pros and cons of doing on this? So we decided that we have a freedom right now to explore and put in processes and procedures to make sure this is a safe, efficient, and there is an ROI. And that's the one thing about a person just buying this. Well, how are you going to collect that data? And when you collect that data, what are you going to do with that data, right? And how are you going to scrub that data? Because we're talking videos is a lot of data, and a lot of it you're not going to utilize. So how do you scrub it? What are you looking for? And so we put all these things into place prior to us going out and doing a job. We have a drone pre-flight plan. We talked with all the governing bodies involved, whether it's county, state, local, city, or private, about the ordinances of flying around, doing what we're doing for them. And then we give you a professional packet of data that is scrubbed and it's groomed to go into a CAD system or a SetWorks, whatever you're using. We scrub that data so that you can immediately take that and put it in, whether it's to an HMI or whether it's to a reclamation software, whatever you're doing. So you can add that data in and immediately start creating productivity out of it. What we want to do is the gray money, the lost money, we want to absorb because that's part of our business plan. It's not, we can do that too. This is our business plan. So we've set things in place to where it's not an economical loser like a lot of new technology is to end users when they purchase it. You know, and that's like meters, specialty meters. End users purchased them before, and then they found they sit on the shelf, and by the time they use them, they have to recalibrate them, versus getting a contractor that this is all that contractor does. So the meter's calibrated, we go in, and we're experts at that, and we talk about the post and pro results, what they're going to do for you, and how we understand they correlate to your needs. That, I think, is where, because we've had the advantage of looking at this, approaching this, discussing as a company what makes sense, we have put a lot of back thought into this. It's not just an impulse. As you show it to somebody and they're like, well, we'll buy this. That's an impulse. How much research did you really do?
And that's really,
where's your moral?
I was going to say, one of the things, that I keep going over in my head is how difficult it is to, be a change agent. And especially in the energy industry, a lot of times I hear the CEOs use the word herd mentality as the energy industry's biggest weakness, that, they have this herd mentality towards things. And I've seen it firsthand. I know what they're talking about. And it's difficult when you're trying to bring new innovation into technologies, into an industry like, especially somebody like the energy industry, who hasn't had to really do things differently for over 100 years. I mean, they really haven't. And right now there is a time that they do need to start doing things differently. The word paradigm shift has been used multiple times in this program, and I always joke, I'm not name dropping here. I'm actually naming names of people who have said this. We've got John Gibson from One Oak, former CEO and chairman, and then we've got Harold Hamm from Continental Resources, James Volker from One Oak, Lee Tillman from Marathon Oil. These are not small companies. These are good-sized companies, and these are men that are on, you Google their name and they're on the Forbes top whatever list. These guys have said paradigm shift, and what you're offering here with the drone service and that sort of thing, that's part of that paradigm shift. And we've recognized it as the communication arm that we've had to do things differently. HR departments, ask them if their job is any different now with computers and with big data. My goodness. I mean, Yeah, I mean, and just the way that they get to a well, hydraulic fracturing, horizontal drilling has changed everything. So we look at, communication and the aerial side of things, and this is just one of those changes that's going on in the industry. I wanted to ask you about the core of your business, because one of the, I don't know, this was story number 3 or 4, I think we did back in 2012 in the Bakken. Pipe fitters, electricians, and, what was the other one? Welders. They are the deities and demigods of the shale play USA. Man, if you're if you're an electrician or a pipe fitter or a welder, man, you got a job. Do you find that that's true? I mean, you've got 4 different arms to your business, short Powerline Services, but I heard the word electrician and master electrician, and that just seems like that's your guys' core.
It is. Like I said, this was found on the Powerline side of it.
Yeah.
It's because, you figure a very small populated state like Wyoming, actually the Powerline is a big grower because you just don't have that spaghetti all over the place, right? Because you just don't have the density of population that required it. We're on more transmission. Well, now we have a lot of distribution going on. So the electrical, and that's a really good thing because that's what I've been. 41 years, been an electrician. And this is what I tell the guys, is that just like any doctor who has to go get a 4-year degree before he gets licensed, or a lawyer, so is an electrician. You're a professional. What that license isn't giving you the right to wire something up. It's giving you the government has now said you have tested in the National Electrical Protection Agency to be safe. What you do in a house is not going to cause people to die in their sleep. You are a professional. So it's never going to go away. The oil and gas just increased our wage. That's really what it does. The booms, it allows professionals to catch up with the other professionals, the lawyers, the bankers, the doctors. It allows the skilled electricians or the physical licensed people to catch up fiscally with the non-physical licensed people. So we love the oil. We love the booms.
Boy,
love the oil play.
Absolutely. In fact, it was so competitive for a while. And this is no kidding. On the east side of the state, there's no oil and gas activity at all. But that's where all the population is, because that's where the universities are. That's where the ag is. North Dakota, for every buck they put into the tax pot, they take back $1.80 because they're an ag state. And that's where majority of the electricians were, because that's where the construction, etc. The oil boom hits, and of course, for the first year and a half, they're loving life because they're sending guys out west and they're billing whatever they want to bill, and this and that. Well, now they're finding out that these guys are getting hired just going out to dinner. These guys are going out to dinner, and they're getting hired by somebody else because they need an electrician that bad, and they're like doubling the salary. And the electrician companies or electrical companies back in the east side of the state, they can't do anything about it, and they got to hire the guys back when they're done because the electricians are so needed, and they have such a valuable skill. Did you find that at all happen with kind of some crazy stories with either your employees or you or the electricians in Wyoming when this kind of $100 oil was happening?
Well, and that's exactly. That's I started actually in the early 80s. I was up in North Dakota, Williston, Dickinson. I was up in the Belfield. We built the TR gas plant there in the Highlight gas plant in the TR field, the Teddy Roosevelt Park.
Uh-huh.
For Western Gas. My brother-in-law was actually the senior VP engineer for Western Gas back in those days.
Okay. So you've experienced this rock star status twice now.
Absolutely. So here I am, this silly redneck from Wyoming. I decided, unfortunately, my senior year that I'd learned all I could, so I might as well just drop out and become an electrician, right? So I did that, dropped out, no college, anything, and And it's everybody's like, well, how did you get to where you are in life? And it's because of these booms. It's because of the need, right? The requirement. Embrace it. Don't fight it. Always embrace new technology. And, in my past, I was a senior architect North America for Schneider Electric prior to this job. So that's what that oil and gas and desire for electricians requires. Now, the problem is, I'm going to be honest with you, is that what we did is we got away on the electrical end from what it was originated as a master apprentice. And we just seem to forget that we need to train our replacements. So you're seeing the skill level of an all-around electrician now being this. Today we have conduitricians, wiretricians, electricians, automation guys. You name it. They all got a name. And I'm hoping, I thought the boom would bring us all back together to one big, but it did not. Actually separated this time, in the core product. This boom actually defined professional, skilled people by capabilities. There's PLC guys, and then there's wire guys. There's conduitricians. There's automation guys that could do process instrumentation, calibrations, and stuff. You can't marry the two anymore. Kind of crazy. But I think when you bring up that two boom, I think the two boom's what did it. I look at my old buddies, and we're all engineers and stuff, and I keep asking, why aren't our kids then, if they came up in the same trade, right?
Yeah.
That's us. We didn't. We got spooked by the boom and the crash of the booms. We need to bring that back up. I'm totally digressing on that.
No, that's okay, because I was thinking about how funny it is, because my son, he's 13 now. Back when he was 8 or 9, it was kind of during the downturn. We did ads, advertisements within our own radio shows and podcasts that where I just said, I'm managing my son's company. That's how long I think this shale play is going to last for. My 13-year-old or my 8-year-old son's company I'm managing right now for when he's ready to take it over, whenever he's 25, or whenever he goes out and falls on his face and decides daddy's business isn't so bad, type of a thing. And that was just to point out that this isn't a bust. This one isn't a bust. It might have a downturn, but it's not going to bust. And not like the traditional days, the old times, because it's totally different. It's a completely different play than what it was in the past, just because of services like what you're bringing in with the Drone Kings and the core samples and just seismic type of technology and innovation they've been able to bring in to check out what's below the Earth's surface. I'm looking at the time here. Kevin Short, SPS Wyoming, otherwise Short Powerline Service. They've got, it looks like 4 or 5 different arms in their company. So I kind of want to give you the last word here. We've kind of talked about drones. We've talked about electricians. We've talked about construction and some power lines. Take an opportunity to kind of summarize what it is you guys do, what kind of customers you're looking for, and how you guys are aiding the energy industry. So go ahead here, Mr. Kevin Short.
Okay, so I believe that we're a full-on oil and gas provider for electrical services. We do everything from surveying the ground to building the power line to electrifying your fields to actually giving you visual data back from your reclamation, wherever that be on that site. Where I believe that we separate ourselves from the other players is that every one of us this is our family. This is a family business. I believe we employ 10 of my relatives here. So the familiarity, we understand each other, and it's crazy, but I believe that with that, we have a better holistic overview of what the customers need, because each one of us realizes we stay in our lane and we know our roles. I'll leave it at that.